Your computer screen, TV screen, or a web page can't act as a camera to view you in a room. Can a web page ask your computer and web browser to very stupidly send it a screenshot of what you're doing? Literally, yes, in a very limited number of cases that is so spurious I can't find a specific way to test for it. Does it happen often? Absolutely no. Can a web page or your smart TV or whatever itself act as a camera? If you're not aware of it, a little grain of truth in this is that a TV set screen can be repurposed as a camera detector, a light detector. Anything that can make something can take that something and reverse it into electronics in many cases. An LED can act as a solar cell. A very, very inefficient one, but it can technically do it. And yes, a TV screen, an older one based on tubes, can technically work as a camera. But it requires a bunch of optics right in front of it that would be really obvious that it's focusing an image of you on it, and it would be not the right material, not the right equipment. It could technically do it. I've been able to do it. Black and white screens are a little easier, but other than that, no. Do most of you have a camera plugged into anything you're looking at, a web page or your smart TV? Depending on what you're using, yes. Do web pages spy on you by asking the browser to give you a bunch of metadata about the screen size you're using, your browser data, a bunch of other stuff? Yeah, they spy on you constantly. Facebook, YouTube, every website does it, period, full stop, and they have done it for years. But can they watch what you're doing? No. I have a camera I'm using on my screen right now. This is the screen I'm using. I'm looking at myself on, and that's the camera. And yes, I'm one of many people that used to put not a piece of tape, but I would drill holes and glue magnets in and put a little metal plate over it to cover it up, and I would put a broken headphone cable plug into the microphone jack. Because I witnessed the computer recording people and sending them messages by email trying to, blackmail them. This only happened once that I saw, and they were very prominent at the time, a long time ago, what we would now call influencers. But yeah, and that was done by hacking into their computer and dumping a virus in. They clicked on an email they shouldn't have. It was that simple. These days, this doesn't happen very often. But the reason it doesn't happen is that websites just mine data overtly and don't want to talk about it. They have patents for it. They monitor everything you do. That's reality. But do they have the ability to watch what you're doing in the room? Very, very few would even try to. And there's virtually no way to do this. And I said virtually because you can find at least one computer or something where they almost get an image of you in the room for various reasons. I know how to do it in a very convoluted way by using interference patterns from the light pulsing from this and receiving the pulse back through an infrared controller or something else you might have on your computer. But unless you have something very unusual, in generally no computer can do this. But most of you have a camera built into your computer or your cell phone or whatever. Spying consists of turning it on and recording. Smart TV. There's a group of different pieces of equipment that were put out that would monitor people in the room and spy on them. Period, full stop, that's what was done. Well, it's done for, no, it's spying. Every time a corporation says, don't worry, they're lying. But it won't act as a camera. Can a web page and your computer cooperate with each other, colluding, to grab what you're doing by literally viewing your screen, by grabbing the data? It's called screen grabbing. Yeah, there's lots of programs that'll do that. I use one when I'm doing a video screen grab of me using a piece of software or demonstrating something on my computer. And yeah, they can be very small, and they can be written into a malware routine or a virus, and that does happen occasionally. Can I explain the dangers of a web page or smart TV or any other technology using a screen as a camera? As a camera, no. As a method for grabbing what you're doing and even being more invasive, hell yes. It just grabs the data. The other one is to just log what's on the screen, convert it into a text file, squeeze it down really tight by just describing what's on the screen and sending it back as an email or a text stream of data. This has been found to happen a lot. And yes, every government tries to do it, and every large corporation, and that's it. So, now we're going to get to mythology. I am a YouTuber that does debunkings of conspiracy theories, propaganda, etc. You're on Facebook, and you see this picture. Me. Nobody gives you an explanation, and reverse image search for that particular picture doesn't get me. It gets, talking head in black background, maybe something entertaining, maybe something spooky because it's October. So someone decides they're going to explain away the image. This is like telling a story now all the way back 2,000 years ago or more. It doesn't have to be accurate. It's someone doing their best estimation of what they're seeing. I see it all the time in some of my videos. Very specifically, one of them where they're making fun of me. That's cool. But the point is, I'm not hurt. The point is that none of that has anything to do with me, and it can't be accurate unless you base it on reality. Reverse image search doesn't always work. Someone sees a picture on Facebook. It's a giant skeleton. We already know about the giant skeleton mythology. There aren't any pictures that you can find that are real of giant skeletons, period, full stop. They're not really human skeletons. They just aren't. Cyclopses, Nephilim, etc. is a faith-based belief system where people believe something must exist in the real world to validate a story they believe was told 2,000 years ago, when if they actually read it without trying to read things into it, they'd find out it doesn't say any of those things at all. This is something I can't convince a true believer of. And you could claim Waptek is a true anti-believer. Every bit of evidence that is presented by the internet that any of you prop up that is found to be a false interpretation of a real picture is proof that you're doing this based on beliefs. You could say the same thing about me, and I invite you to do so. I will give an example involving something completely unrelated in a minute. Back in 2019, very early 2019, late 2018, Taiwanese sculptor Tu Wei-Cheng was inspired by a folktale to make a giant plastic serpent and human skeleton as sculptures, with them intertwining and fighting. Or you could say they were doing something else. It was displayed in a Krabi Thailand cave in early 2019. Links below in the description. But the picture itself that most people took was of the sculpture, because artists don't like putting themselves in front of their artwork. Warning, if you make a giant skeleton and don't stand in front of it for every photo and tell everybody, no, this isn't Nephilim, you're not even going to go for it on Facebook. Hold up a sign that says it in English, because that's where you're going to see it more. Because it was in Thai, because it was local news and nobody cared about it, when the picture came out, someone grabbed the picture only by right-clicking and saving, so that's really cool looking, and then posted it on Facebook and realized they didn't have the story anymore because they couldn't read the goddamn thing because it was in a foreign language. It spread around on Facebook, and reverse image search brought you back to the story, which of course most people couldn't read. Ain't nobody got no time for that. But it was an artwork done by somebody. They saw the artist and saw, oh, that must be the guy who discovered it in the cave. 100% can't debunk it. Well, he did. It's plastic. I don't know what his reaction was when he found out that he was supposed to be some archaeologist discovering a skeleton and a serpent. Every society and culture has a story of a hero, usually very tall for the time, 7 feet, not 8 or 10, fighting some monster, usually a serpent. Human beings have a natural fear of serpents because they're one of the few creatures that are large, able to bite us, and have venom that can make us sick or kill us. It's really rare now, but it wasn't rare in the past, and in some places in India, it's still a big problem. And yeah, every society has a story like this because, except for a very small number of locations, most places have some form of snake that can bite you and make you sick. Not necessarily kill you. Usually it's a bacterial infection. But that was not a fake story. That was a misinterpretation of an image. And then when people found out they were wrong, they then immediately screamed, conspiracy, and you're lying, and blah, 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 because they want to believe giants. Stories of giants from the 2,000 year ago time frame talk to people 7 feet tall. We have plenty of them these days. Go to any basketball game, you'll see the tallest of the tall. true giants that we have on record for the last couple of 100 years, maybe 300 years, never got very, very tall. You go back further, they get taller, but there's no way to confirm it. Because they were hyped up circus stories where people were put in forced perspective environments to make sure they looked tall. Because you did the 10-cent tour. But when no money was involved and when medical doctors actually measured somebody using a standard measuring device, remember, the cubit and the foot were based on non-standard characteristics of from here to here and the length of your foot from the toe to the heel. Those aren't standards. Those are relative standards. We don't get heights that high. 7 feet isn't the limit, but the taller you get, the more bulky your body has to get. People who get ridiculously tall, their bones don't bulk up, and they die from getting too tall too quickly as youths. One sad case is a guy who was the world record holder for being tallest on the planet, also the longest hands at one point, and he died from a leg infection because he had ridiculously bad circulation in his legs. He had to walk with a crutch. It was a crippling illness, being tall. And in modern day periods, when people are starting to have this happen, they get a surgical procedure to stop it because it'll kill them. It will kill them horribly because we now live longer. You or anybody else watching could be 110 years old and be considered an ancient by literally ancient standards. They had people who got that old. They were just very rare. Now they're not as rare. And that's apparently a problem for certain people. They don't like that. You may have noticed that we don't see a lot of stories about people being 400 years old because people can easily check these things these days, except out of countries where they deliberately don't, because they're lying. But someone sees a picture on Facebook and misinterprets it. It's not propaganda. It's not a conspiracy theory, blah, blah, blah. They're not being malicious. They're just mistaken. But in some cases, it's wishful thinking all the way to zealotry. Now, I'm going to bring up my example of zealotry and me going after a windmill. But again, to repeat, the screen, just the screen itself can't be a camera. But it can be screenshotted through software, grabbing the data, and worse, making a copy of it on a virtual screen you can't see. Unless you know how to dig for that, and there is no general guide I can come up with. I can't even determine this sometimes. You can't really be spied on through a TV screen specifically, or anything else without a camera. But so many of them have cameras that, and a lot of them don't have cameras, they just monitor what you're doing in the room. And then they say they're not spying on you, which is bullshit. Next. Every giant skeleton picture you see is fake. Not that the person posting it is lying. You calling me a liar? No, I'm saying you're repeating the lie someone else told. Or a misinterpretation. Because humans, when they get too tall, can't survive it. Unless we get really bulky or do everything on all fours. Which means we're not really tall anymore. We just turn into cattle that weigh a huge amount. And stories of giants in the past were people who were around 7 foot tall or higher. The average height in the United States, you might see, I'm just under 6 feet tall. We hover around 6 feet tall these days. People didn't in the past. So someone 7 feet tall when you're 5'1" is a giant, even today. And yes, some of them got to 8 feet tall, but they didn't live long. But they were enormous and very impressive looking. But stories of hybrid alien or hybrid angel, blah, this is all part of deliberately misinterpreting and refusing to read that you're misinterpreting various scriptures, books, or stories. Now we're going to get to my example of doing this, and I'm fully aware I've done it. I've done an opinion video about the CIP, that's the standards organization in Europe, deciding to designate this cartridge as being the cartridge of this value, not this one. This other one over here was made by taking a straw and sticking it on a shotgun primer. If you're not aware of the fact, that involves standardizing the straw. So they weren't comfortable doing it. This was invented a long time ago in Turkey because they ran out of cartridges. So they just started making this really weak cartridge that could fire number 4 buckshot. I mean, it technically was self-defense grade for hunting and or getting rid of pests, but it didn't involve anything that needed a standard. It's just a straw stuck in a metal tube, literally a brake line tube, a steel tube, fired through a shotgun by wrapping it with a lot of tape. Then another company comes along and says, we'd like to have a this standard, and they got it by bribery. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with it.